One light glows inside Microsoft HQ. Satya Nadella takes the helm. Emails sent, servers awaken. Developers rise, a giant stirs. This is the moment Microsoft rebooted everything.
It's pre-dawn on February 4th, 2014 in Redmond, Washington. A lone office light glows inside Microsoft's headquarters as Satya Nadella gazes out the window, coffee in hand. In a few hours, he will officially step into a role only two men have held before him. CEO of Microsoft? He takes a deep breath and opens his laptop to finalize an email to Microsoft's 125,000 employees. His fingers hover over the keyboard as he rereads a pivotal line. Our industry does not respect tradition. It only respects innovation. Those words capture the enormity of the moment. Microsoft, the tech titan, known for Windows and Office, has stalled. Internal fiefdoms and complacency threaten its future. Nadella knows the road ahead requires nothing less than a complete reboot of the company's vision and culture. He hits send. As the sun peeks over the Cascades, Nadella straightens his shoulders, feeling both the weight and the thrill of the challenge. The email now pinging inboxes across the globe continues. This is a critical time for the industry and for Microsoft. Our job is to ensure that Microsoft thrives in a mobile and cloud-first world. The tone is earnest and forward-looking, a stark contrast to the bombast of years past. In this quiet moment, Satya Nadella, an engineer from India with a passion for learning and an ethos of empathy, prepares to reboot Microsoft. The journey that led him here spans continents and decades marked by bold dreams, hard lessons, and a profound belief that a culture of humility and learning can revive even the mightiest of companies. How did a cricket-loving kid from Hyderabad end up at the helm of a $3 trillion company, orchestrating one of the greatest turnarounds in tech history? To find out, we must rewind the clock and trace the inspirational rise of Satya Nadella, the man who dared to reform Microsoft from the inside out. Early life in Hyderabad, curiosity and cricket. Satya Narayana. Nadella was born on August 19, 1967 in Hyderabad, India. Growing up in a middle-class Telugu family, Satya was surrounded by influences that shaped his character. His father, B.N. Yugandhar, was an influential civil servant in the Indian Administrative Service, and his mother, Prabhavati, was a Sanskrit scholar. From them, Satya absorbed the values of discipline, education, and humility. But like many Indian boys, young Satya's first love wasn't coding or gadgets, it was cricket. In fact, he dreamed of playing cricket professionally, spending countless afternoons bowling fast deliveries under the blazing Hyderabad sun. Cricket taught Satya early lessons in teamwork and leadership. He later reminisced that playing cricket taught me more about working in teams and leadership that has stayed with me throughout my career. One formative incident he often recalls during a school cricket match. Satya was bowling terribly, so poorly that his captain took him off the field. Young Satya's confidence was shattered, but a few minutes later, the captain handed the ball back and encouraged him to try again. Satya was stunned. He could have broken all my confidence and kicked me off the team, Nadella recounted, but instead, he gave me another chance. That ability, that sensibility of what leaders can do to bring teams along to do their best work. That's what we can learn from team sport. The lesson stuck great leaders build people up rather than tearing them down. It's a lesson Satya would carry into his corporate life years later. Beyond sports, Satya was an unusually curious child. He loved to tinker and read. I always knew I wanted to build things, he said of his youth. This drive led him to pursue electronics engineering at Manipal Institute of Technology, where he earned his bachelor's degree in 1988. However, the college didn't have an extensive computer science program, and Satya hungered for more. So, like many ambitious young Indians, he set his sights on the United States, the burgeoning center of computer technology. With a blend of excitement and nerves, he left his homeland to further his education, carrying with him a foundational belief instilled by his parents and cricket captain alike. Stay eager, keep learning, and never give up on your team. Voyage to America: Education and Opportunity. In the late 1980s, Satya arrived in the US as a foreign student, brimming with optimism. He enrolled at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, where he obtained a master's degree in computer science in 1990. Imagine the culture shock: Hyderabad's crowded streets and spicy biryani traded for Milwaukee's chilly winters and cheese curds. Yet Satya adapted quickly, fueled by the same curiosity that defined his childhood. He delved into computer systems and programming languages, often staying late in the computer lab to quench his thirst for learning, a trait he proudly identifies in himself. Those who knew him noticed an insatiable appetite for knowledge. He would later joke that he buys more books than he can finish and signs up for more online courses than he can complete. If something new needed learning, Satya was game. After earning his MS, Nadella faced a crossroad: pursue a PhD or jump into the tech industry. He opted for real-world experience, landing a job in Silicon Valley at Sun Microsystems. In the early 1990s, Sun Microsystems was a hotbed of innovation, a company known for the mantra, "The network is the computer." As a member of the tech staff, Satya got a taste of a cutting-edge work culture, but fate had a different plan. In 1992, an enticing opportunity arose at a rising software giant in the Pacific Northwest, Microsoft. Satya was just 24, and Microsoft was on the cusp of dominating personal computing under founder Bill Gates' leadership. The decision to move once more, this time to Seattle, would change the trajectory of his life. Joining Microsoft, the greatest job on earth. In the summer of 1992, Satya Nadella stepped onto Microsoft's Redmond campus for his first day of work. I remember distinctly walking into Building 22 thinking, "That's the greatest job on earth I have, and I don't need anything more." Nadella later reflected. At the time, Microsoft was on the rise. Windows 3.1 had just launched, and the company's mission of a computer on every desk and in every home was coming to fruition. For Nadella, a passionate technophile, joining Microsoft felt like a dream realized. He was now part of the same organization as his role models, Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer, helping build software that could reshape the world. But Microsoft in the 90s was also a pressure cooker. Brilliant minds were pushing the envelope of tech, and young engineers either sank or swam. Nadella's first projects were a mixed bag of successes and failures. Perfect for a quick education, he worked on an ill-fated interactive TV initiative, an idea ahead of its time that never took off, and on Windows NT, a cornerstone operating system for businesses. This baptism by fire taught Satya an early lesson in resilience. Not every idea would succeed, but every attempt was a chance to learn. Colleagues remember Nadella not for loud bravado, but for his quiet determination and ability to rally a team. In one legendary moment from 1993, the ordinarily soft-spoken Satya went in front of the cameras to enthusiastically pitch Microsoft's developer tool, Visual Basic, in a telethon-style broadcast. There he was, a bespectacled, baby-faced engineer passionately selling the vision of Windows as a platform for developers. It was clear Satya had a knack for bridging the technical and the human, explaining complex technology in terms of what it could empower people to do. Microsoft recognized his talent and drive. Even as a junior engineer, Nadella demonstrated a rare commitment to self-improvement. Astonishingly, while working full-time at Microsoft, he began pursuing an MBA at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. Every Friday afternoon, he would fly nearly 1,700 miles from Seattle to Chicago, attend classes on weekends, and return by Monday morning. This grueling routine went on until he earned his MBA in 1997. Many people would buckle under the stress, but Satya thrived. He embodied the learn-it-all mentality even before the phrase ever left his lips. Microsoft's culture at the time was often described as one of know-it-alls, but Satya was different. He was a sponge, not a peacock. Co-workers were impressed by his endurance and genuine love of learning. This dual pursuit, excelling at work while expanding his education, hinted at Nadella's future approach to leadership. Never stop growing and never think you have all the answers. Climbing the ranks from engineer to executive. By the late 1990s, Satya Nadella had proven himself as one of Microsoft's rising stars. He had the technical chops and a keen business sense, a powerful combination. His first major promotion came in 1999 when he was named Vice President of Microsoft Central, a then new division focused on small business online services. It wasn't a glamorous assignment, essentially web-based email and website hosting for SMEs. But Satya dove in with zeal. He learned the ropes of managing products end-to-end and coordinating teams across engineering, marketing, and sales. Crucially, he learned to lead not by decree, but by building consensus and energy. Those who worked with him noted that Nadella led with empathy, even then taking time to listen to engineers and customers alike before making decisions. In 2001, just as Microsoft's co-founder Bill Gates handed the CEO reins to Steve Ballmer, Nadella climbed another rung. He became Corporate VP of Microsoft Business Solutions. In this role, he handled enterprise software products that catered to large organizations. This was a formative experience, placing Satya at the intersection of technology development and real-world business needs. He learned to speak the language of CEOs and CIOs, who cared less about tech jargon and more about how Microsoft's solutions solved their problems. Satya's ability to translate bits and bytes into business value skyrocketed his reputation internally. He was known for asking tough questions in meetings, not to put others down, but to get to the core of issues by fostering a learning culture within his teams, where failing fast and sharing lessons was encouraged. Nadella was already practicing the culture change he'd later scale to all of Microsoft. As the 2000s progressed, Microsoft faced new battles. Google in search, Apple in mobile open source. In servers, Nadella's versatility made him invaluable. In 2007, he was tapped to lead Microsoft's online services division as Senior VP. Suddenly, this one-time Windows engineer was in charge of Bing, the nascent cloud-based versions of Office, and even the Xbox Live online gaming service. It was a whirlwind portfolio of products on the bleeding edge. Under crushing competitive pressure, Nadella learned a key trait of effective leaders: ruthless prioritization. He focused on improving Bing's algorithms and user experience, planting seeds for AI-driven improvements later. And while Bing never overtook Google, it steadily improved. More importantly, Satya's tenure in online services familiarized him with the concept of cloud computing, services delivered not from a user's PC, but from Microsoft's data centers. Little did anyone know Nadella would soon helm Microsoft's biggest bet in the cloud. By 2011, Satya Nadella's rise was nearly complete. He was appointed president of the Server and Tools Division. This was a crown jewel unit housing Windows Server, SQL Server, and a little project called Azure, Microsoft's fledgling cloud platform. For years then, CEO Steve Ballmer had pushed Azure as a risky but necessary gamble to catch up with Amazon's pioneering cloud service, AWS. Now, Ballmer entrusted it to Satya. In this role, Nadella truly hit his stride. He led a massive transformation of Microsoft's back-end technologies from on-premises software to cloud services. Engineers in his division recall that Satya was both strategic and hands-on. He could whiteboard a vision for cloud computing's future and then dive into specific product reviews on how to improve uptime or add features. Over the next few years, Azure grew exponentially under Nadella's leadership, outpacing the market and winning over customers from competitors. The success did not go unnoticed. Microsoft's cloud revenue surged, and Azure proved that Microsoft could thrive in the new cloud era. More subtly, Satya's leadership style, collaborative, outcome-driven, and quietly confident, began to stand out against the more brash, old-school Microsoft culture. By 2013, insiders whispered that Satya Nadella was a dark horse candidate to succeed Ballmer as CEO. Few outside Microsoft knew his name then. That was about to change dramatically. Microsoft on the brink, the 2013 crisis. To understand the magnitude of what Satya Nadella would eventually accomplish, we have to picture Microsoft's state in the early 2010s. Despite its size and past successes, Microsoft was in trouble by 2013. The tech world it once ruled had shifted under its feet. Windows 8, released in 2012, was meant to be a bold reimagining of the PC experience. Instead, it was a flop, confusing loyal customers with its missing start button and a touch-focused design that few had asked for. Meanwhile, the consumer computing landscape had moved decisively to smartphones, an area where Microsoft lagged disastrously. Apple's iPhone and Google's Android together dominated the market. Microsoft's Windows Phone, despite a few clever ideas, barely registered a presence. By 2013, even die-hard fans were losing faith. Microsoft's mobile strategy had faltered, and the company had taken massive financial hits from a failed tablet, the first Surface RT, and its ill-fated acquisition of Nokia's phone business. Internally, the company's famous competitive spirit had turned toxic. Different product groups fought turf wars, prioritizing internal wins over customers. Engineers jokingly referred to the culture as Microsoft against Microsoft. One telling anecdote from the 90s when this culture took root involved a usability team reporting that 6 out of 10 users couldn't figure out a particular Windows feature. A Windows engineer dismissively asked, "Where did you find 6 morons?" That know-it-all arrogance, the belief that Microsoft knew what was best for customers, even when the evidence showed otherwise, had become deeply ingrained. By 2013, it was clear that this attitude was driving Microsoft into irrelevance. The company faced regulatory penalties in Europe. Its stock price had remained stagnant for years, and top talent was drifting to newer, trendier tech companies like Google and Facebook. Steve Ballmer, Microsoft's CEO since 2000, decided it was time to shake things up, including possibly himself. In August 2013, Ballmer announced he would retire within a year. The hunt for Microsoft's next CEO began, and it was the talk of the tech industry. Names of outsiders floated around. Alan Mulally of Ford, Stephen Elop from Nokia, even Safra Catz of Oracle. Internally, a few executives were contenders, including one Satya Nadella, who was quietly running the profitable server and tools division. Many wondered, could an insider fix Microsoft's cultural mess? Especially someone who had lived through the very era that created the issues? It wouldn't be easy. Microsoft needed not just a new strategy, but a new mindset. Employees were constantly battling behind the scenes for supremacy, and both consumers and developers were losing faith in the company. The stage was set for a transformation, and Satya was about to get the chance of a lifetime to lead it. The new CEO, Satya Steps Up. On February 4th, 2014, Microsoft made it official. Satya Nadella would become the third CEO in the company's history, following legends Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer. The announcement initially surprised those outside tech circles, Satya, who some headlines quipped. But within Microsoft, many breathed a sigh of relief. Nadella was widely respected internally. a 22-year veteran with experience across key businesses, a stellar track record with Azure's growth, and crucially the backing of both Gates and Ballmer in the CEO search. Bill Gates even stepped down as chairman at that time, but agreed to serve as a technical advisor to Satya. A strong vote of confidence for Microsoft's founder. Still, the challenge before Nadella was daunting. Microsoft's share price hovered around $36. It hadn't moved much in 10 years. Employee morale was uneven, and the tech landscape seemed to belong to Apple, Google, Amazon, and upstarts like Netflix and Salesforce. Satya's first days as CEO signaled something fresh was in the air. For one, there was the humility and thoughtfulness of his communications, like the company-wide email he sent the day he took over, which struck a very different tone than the fierce, chest-thumping memos of the past. Today is a very humbling day for me. I am here because I believe Microsoft is the best company in the world. He began thanking Bill and Steve for their leadership. Nadella's language was about honor service and inspiration, not domination or entitlement. And then came the key line we saw in our opening scene. Our industry does not respect tradition. It only respects innovation. It was a clear message. Microsoft could no longer rest on its laurels. No more doing things a certain way just because that's how they'd always been done. The company had to rediscover its inventive, agile spirit or be left behind. Nadella's email outlined not only his vision for technology, a mobile and cloud-first world as he called it, but also gave employees a glimpse of who he was as a person. He spoke about his family and the influences that shaped him. Writing, "Many who know me say I am defined by my curiosity and thirst for learning. I fundamentally believe that if you are not learning new things, you stop doing great and useful things." To a workforce that had grown cynical from the know-it-all culture, this was a breath of fresh air. Here was a CEO openly admitting he didn't know everything and emphasizing continuous learning. It was both disarming and inspiring. Perhaps nothing symbolized the changing of the guard more than the image of Satya Nadella flanked by Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer, smiling broadly as employees gave them a standing ovation. February 2014, Bill Gates left and Steve Ballmer right. Welcome Satya Nadella Center as Microsoft's new CEO. Nadella is only the third person to hold the company's top job. At 46 years old, Nadella was taking the helm of a storied company at its most vulnerable moment. In private, one can imagine Satya sharing a poignant exchange with his wife Anu that day, perhaps marveling at how far they'd come since arriving in America and acknowledging the immense responsibility ahead. Whatever got Microsoft here won't get us there. He might have said, "It's time to hit refresh." With humility, hope, and a dash of nerves, Satya stepped into the spotlight, a new kind of Microsoft leader for a new era. Cultural reboot, from know-it-all to learn-it-all. One of Satya Nadella's very first priorities as CEO was transforming Microsoft's culture. He knew that no matter how promising a strategy or product might be, it would falter if the company's old toxic culture persisted. To me, the C in CEO stands for Curator of Culture, he once said. So, what was wrong with Microsoft's culture? In a nutshell, it had devolved into a know-it-all mindset that stifled innovation. Many at Microsoft were brilliant, and they knew it. But that confidence often turned into arrogance. Teams operated as if they had all the answers, and admitting mistakes or gaps in knowledge was seen as weakness. Nadella set out to flip that mentality. He envisioned Microsoft as a team of learn-it-alls instead. While the phrase may have sounded awkward at first, it soon became a defining mantra of his leadership. The message was clear. No matter how senior or experienced you are, you must approach problems with curiosity and humility. Because in a rapidly changing industry, you always have something new to learn. It doesn't matter if you're a top executive or a first-line seller. He has exactly the same quality of listening, observed a longtime Microsoft colleague. That capacity to truly hear others, whether colleagues, partners, or customers, became a hallmark of Nadella's leadership style and one he encouraged across the company. To catalyze this cultural shift, Nadella drew on one of his personal inspirations, psychologist Carol Dweck's concept of the growth mindset. Dweck's research basically says that those who believe abilities can be developed a growth mindset end up achieving more than those who believe abilities are fixed. A fixed mindset, Nadella took this to heart. He shared Dweck's ideas throughout Microsoft, encouraging teams to view challenges as opportunities to grow rather than threats to their egos. In meetings, he began asking empathetic, probing questions. What are we missing? Who has a different perspective? What can we do better next time? This was a stark contrast to the aggressive questioning style people were used to, where the subtext was often, "I'm right, you're wrong." Over time, employees noticed the change. One engineer said, "Satya starts meetings by listening. That sounds simple, but around here, it's revolutionary." Nadella also tackled some structural barriers to a healthy culture. Microsoft had infamously used a stack-ranking performance review system, where managers had to rank employees against each other, rewarding the top and cutting the bottom, essentially forcing internal competition. This had led to employees not wanting to collaborate or share information since someone else's win could be your loss. Under Nadella, stack ranking was thrown out. In its place, Microsoft shifted to focus on teamwork, continuous feedback, and coaching. The message was clear: we win together or not at all. Another cultural revolution came from a perhaps unexpected angle: empathy. To the hard-charging old guard, empathy might have sounded like a soft, even irrelevant concept. But for Nadella, empathy was now the core of Microsoft's identity. Most people think empathy is a soft skill not relevant to business, Satya noted, whereas I believe it's essential to innovation. To meet the unmet, unarticulated needs of customers, you have to have empathy. This was a profound insight. By encouraging employees to truly put themselves in others' shoes, whether customers or teammates, Nadella was actually driving them to create better products. No more calling users morons for not understanding a feature. Instead, figure out why they're confused and fix it for them. Satya's personal journey had a lot to do with why he championed empathy. In 1996, Satya and Anu welcomed their first child, a son named Zain. But the birth was traumatic. Zain was born with severe cerebral palsy, a lifelong condition that would require constant care. Nadella was 29 and initially fell into despair. "For years, I asked, why did this happen to me?" he admitted. He was focused on how it upended his plans. Meanwhile, his wife Anu approached things very differently. As soon as she recovered from her C-section, she began a relentless quest to get Zain the best therapies and support, pouring herself into caring for their son. Watching Anu, Satya had an epiphany. Nothing had happened to him. Something had happened to Zain, and it was Satya's responsibility to step up as a father. This realization, seeing life through another's eyes, unlocked a deeper empathy in him. "For the first time, I understood what empathy really means," he said. "It's not just a sentimental feeling. It's seeing life through others' eyes. And you can't switch it off when you go to work." Satya Nadella credits raising a child with special needs for teaching him profound empathy and shaping him as a leader. That empathy fundamentally changed Satya as a manager and leader. He became more patient, more attuned to the struggles of others, and more passionate about building products that could improve lives. At Microsoft, he openly shared how Zain's journey made him a better listener and decision maker. "Becoming a father of a son with special needs was the turning point in my life that has shaped who I am today." Nadella wrote in a 2017 essay. He described Zain as the joy of our family, whose strength and warmth inspire me to keep pushing the boundaries of what technology can do. Zain passed away in 2022 at age 26. But his legacy lives on in Microsoft's culture. Nadella's emphasis on accessibility in products like AI services for the differently abled and his push for inclusive design stemmed directly from that personal empathy. So, under Nadella, Microsoft employees gradually started to see a shift. Meetings felt more collaborative leaders, more caring teams, more willing to admit mistakes. In one telling moment, shortly after Satya took over, a group of employees created a mock gravestone for Internet Explorer and Windows Phone at an annual company event, essentially poking fun at Microsoft's past failures. Under previous leadership, this might have been frowned upon. Under Nadella, even executives laughed, acknowledging missteps and signaling, "It's okay to move on and learn." When you foster a growth mindset, failures are not an endpoint, but a fork in the road, guiding you toward a better path. This cultural reboot, from know-it-all arrogance to learn-it-all curiosity, laid the groundwork for everything else. Nadella would achieve. Microsoft was finally ready to innovate without ego and collaborate without internal drama. Strategic shift from Windows only to world-friendly. Changing the culture was only one part of Satya Nadella's reboot of Microsoft. The other part was a bold, strategic pivot. For decades, Microsoft's identity and profit was tied to its Windows operating system and Office software, mostly on personal computers. The company's instinct was to protect Windows at all costs, even if it meant giving non-Windows platforms second-class treatment. Nadella saw that this Windows-centric worldview was actually holding Microsoft back in a world that had become multi-platform and cloud-powered, so he made a daring proclamation. Microsoft would become a cloud-first, mobile-first company, later refined to cloud-first, AI-first as the years went on. In practice, this meant Microsoft's own Windows would no longer dictate every decision. Instead, the company would prioritize services and cloud infrastructure that work on any device, whether it's running Windows, Linux, Android, or iOS. This was a seismic mindset shift. It meant loving platforms that Microsoft didn't own and even supporting competitors. But Nadella was convinced it was necessary for Microsoft's future. One of the earliest signs of this new strategy was Nadella's embrace of partnerships with longtime rivals. Not long after becoming CEO, he shocked the tech industry by announcing Microsoft Office for Apple's iPad. Previously, Microsoft had stubbornly kept Office, Word, Excel, PowerPoint mostly on Windows to prop up the PC ecosystem. But iPads were everywhere, and by releasing Office on iOS, Microsoft acknowledged reality. We'll go where our customers are. The move was a hit. Millions downloaded Office on iPad, grateful to have the productivity suite on their favorite tablet. Nadella didn't stop there. Under his watch, Microsoft made friendly overtures to Linux, an open-source operating system that predecessor Steve Ballmer once called a cancer. Nadella's team not only allowed Linux to run on Azure, they made it a first-class citizen in the cloud, even open-sourcing key pieces of Microsoft software. This would have been unthinkable. A few years prior, Satya punctuated the shift with a cheeky tweet, Microsoft Linux. It was half joke, half historic moment. The company that once fought open source was now one of its biggest contributors and supporters. By 2016, Microsoft had joined the Linux Foundation and was integrating Linux tools into Windows developers around the world. Who had long viewed Microsoft with suspicion took notice Nadella was rebuilding trust with this critical community. By showing Microsoft's tools would empower them, not lock them in. Nadella's Microsoft also reached across the aisle to partner with Amazon, integrating Alexa and Cortana assistants with Salesforce, once considered an enemy to Microsoft's own CRM, now a cloud partner, and even with Google settling patent feuds and collaborating on certain open source projects. Perhaps the most symbolic gesture came in 2015. Satya Nadella took the stage at a Windows event and confidently used an iPhone, yes, an Apple iPhone, to demonstrate Microsoft's apps, quipping that it was the best phone for Microsoft experiences. This was a far cry from the days when Steve Ballmer would never publicly acknowledge using a competitor's device. Nadella's point was clear. Microsoft's mission was no longer to dominate everything, but to empower people everywhere on any device. If that meant putting Microsoft's software on an iPhone or Android, so be it. Better to have happy Microsoft customers on non-Windows devices than to cling to Windows and have no customers at all. This pragmatism was refreshing and ultimately profitable. Nadella's philosophy is about partnering and ensuring Microsoft software and services are available wherever customers are, even if that's not Windows. While opening up to rival platforms, Nadella doubled down on areas where Microsoft could excel: cloud computing enterprise services and emerging technologies like AI and AR. The rapid growth of Azure is a case in point. Satya had overseen Azure's early development, and as CEO, he poured fuel on that fire. Microsoft invested billions in new data centers across the globe, drastically expanded Azure's capabilities, and crucially started winning big corporate clients for its cloud. Under Nadella's cloud-first mandate, teams that once focused only on Windows were redeployed to build cloud versions of their products. Office 365 subscription-based Office in the cloud became a flagship offering. Microsoft's database, CRM, and development tools all got cloud-hosted versions. By the late 2010s, Azure had grown to be the second largest cloud platform in the world after Amazon's AWS, and it was closing the gap. This was vital. Cloud computing became the new backbone of Microsoft's business, generating steady revenue and allowing Microsoft to once again be a central player in enterprise technology. In fact, in 2018, Microsoft's market capitalization exceeded $800 billion, surpassing Google, largely on the strength of Azure and cloud-based Office 365, something that would have been hard to imagine when cloud and open source were niche experiments a decade earlier. Nadella also greenlit innovative hardware and research projects, shedding Microsoft's image of being slow to new trends. The company released Surface Book and Surface Pro devices that blurred the line between laptop and tablet, showing Microsoft could create premium hardware. They developed HoloLens, a cutting-edge augmented reality headset, envisioning a future beyond the flat screens of PCs and phones. And when something wasn't working, Nadella wasn't afraid to can it. For example, he famously decided to skip Windows 9 entirely and jump to Windows 10, a vastly improved, user-friendly OS that won back many who were alienated by Windows 8. Windows 10's success, it now runs on over 1 billion devices, helped repair Microsoft's reputation among PC users. But tellingly, Nadella positioned Windows not as the center of the universe, but as one part of a larger ecosystem, including cloud and cross-platform apps. One dramatic example of Nadella's decisive strategy was how he handled the Nokia acquisition. Just before Nadella became CEO, Microsoft under Ballmer had acquired Nokia's phone business for over $7 billion in a last-ditch attempt to save Windows Phone. It quickly became apparent this was a doomed effort. Rather than throw good money after bad, Nadella made the painful call in 2015 to write off the entire Nokia acquisition and lay off nearly 18,000 employees associated with it. It was a brutal decision affecting many lives, but Nadella believed it was necessary to pivot away from trying to compete directly in smartphones. I voted no. He revealed about the original Nokia deal. I did not get why the world needed the third ecosystem in phones. We were chasing our competitors' taillights. Instead, Microsoft refocused its mobile strategy on bringing its software like Office, Outlook, and later Teams to iOS and Android, essentially conceding the OS war in order to win in apps and services. We should only be in the phone business when we have something that is really differentiated, Nadella said, rationalizing the exit. Critics at the time wondered if this meant Microsoft was ceding too much. But hindsight shows It was a smart strategic retreat that freed Microsoft to focus on strengths cloud software instead of bleeding cash in hardware fights. It couldn't win, and Nadella's willingness to course correct, even at the cost of admitting a massive mistake, underscored the new Microsoft culture of confronting reality and learning rather than doubling down on prideful decisions. Milestones of the turnaround. The results speak. As Nadella's changes in culture and strategy took root, the impact on Microsoft's fortunes was unmistakable. The company that had been dismissed as a stagnant legacy player saw a renaissance under his leadership. Let's look at some key milestones and achievements in the Nadella era that highlight how dramatic the turnaround has been. Market cap resurgence. When Nadella took over in 2014, Microsoft's market value was around $300 billion and its stock price had been almost flat for years. By 2015, Microsoft's stock had already jumped 14%, a sign of investor confidence in the new direction. But that was just the start. Over the next several years, Microsoft's valuation skyrocketed. In 2018, Microsoft surpassed Apple to become the world's most valuable company for the first time since 2002. And in late 2021 into 2022, Microsoft hit a $2 trillion market cap, then astonishingly, a $3 trillion market cap in 2023, only the second company ever at that time to do so. The company's share price more than tenfolded during Nadella's first 9 years as CEO. While stock price isn't the only measure of success, it emphatically signaled that Microsoft was no longer dead money, but a growth story again. Thanks to cloud revenue expansion, Office 365 subscriptions, and new business lines, Azure's rise. Under Nadella, Azure went from an underdog to a centerpiece of enterprise IT globally. Microsoft's cloud division now powers everything from small startups to huge governments. They managed to secure high-profile deals like the $10 billion JEDI contract, later canceled due to politics, but still a big win at the time, and major partnerships with companies like SAP, Adobe, and even rival Oracle to run their services on Azure. By embracing open-source technologies and supporting Linux on Azure, Microsoft made Azure friendly to modern developers and not just Windows shops. The result? Azure's market share steadily climbed. As of the mid-2020s, Azure is typically cited as holding about 20–30% of the cloud infrastructure market versus AWS's roughly 30–40%, a strong number 2 position. More importantly, cloud services became a huge chunk of Microsoft's revenue, effectively replacing Windows as the financial engine of the company. This pivot couldn't have been more timely, especially when a pandemic hit in 2020. Enterprises rushed to the cloud, benefiting Azure enormously. Office 365 and subscription model Nadella drove the company to move its flagship Office suite to a subscription-tolerant cloud model, Office 365, now called Microsoft 365. This not only provided more steady recurring revenue, but also allowed Office to keep improving continuously, rather than big upgrades every few years. It was a bet that people would rent software rather than own it, and it largely paid off. Microsoft 365 became ubiquitous in businesses and even among many consumers. Bundling Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Teams, OneDrive storage, etc. into one cloud-connected productivity suite that works on any device. By 2023, Office 365 had over 300 million paid seats, showcasing Microsoft's thriving relevance in the workplace. Windows 10 success. Though Nadella downplayed Windows as the center of everything, he certainly didn't neglect it. Learning from the Windows 8 debacle, Microsoft made Windows 10 a free upgrade for most users and focused on user feedback through the Windows Insider program. The Start menu came back. The system became more keyboard and mouse friendly, while keeping good touch support and performance improved. The result was the warmest reception for a Windows version since Windows 7. Hundreds of millions upgraded quickly, and Windows 10 helped renew faith in Microsoft's ability to deliver a solid OS. This was critical for retaining Microsoft's PC ecosystem, even as the company extended elsewhere. LinkedIn acquisition 2016. In 2016, Nadella made a blockbuster move by acquiring LinkedIn for $26 billion. It was Microsoft's largest acquisition ever at the time. Many were initially puzzled, a social network for professionals being bought by Microsoft. But the logic became clear. LinkedIn housed the professional profiles and connections of over 500 million people. Microsoft saw this as a goldmine to integrate with its products. Imagine Outlook pulling in LinkedIn info, or LinkedIn Learning bundling with Microsoft Enterprise offerings. Nadella promised LinkedIn a lot of autonomy to avoid the fate of past acquisitions that withered under Microsoft's control. And largely, he kept that promise. Since then, LinkedIn has grown significantly, and Microsoft has started weaving insights from LinkedIn's economic graph into offerings like Dynamics 360. It's a long-term play, but one aligned with Nadella's vision of making Microsoft essential to how people work and connect. GitHub acquisition, 2018. 2 years later, Nadella struck again, acquiring GitHub for $7.5 billion. This one really sent shockwaves through the tech community. GitHub is the world's largest code hosting platform, beloved by developers and open source contributors. Under previous management, Microsoft was seen as an enemy of open source. Now it was buying the very hub of open source development. Skeptics worried Microsoft would ruin GitHub or force its own agenda, but Nadella handled it brilliantly. He let GitHub operate independently, even keeping its popular CEO Nat Friedman and later successor in charge. Microsoft used the acquisition not to control GitHub, but to listen to developers. Over time, the distrust eased, especially as Microsoft demonstrated goodwill, for example, making key development tools free for open source projects, continuing to support non-Microsoft programming languages, etc. This move signaled that Microsoft was now a developer-friendly open source embracing company, a far cry from its 2000s image. It also gave Microsoft a seat at the table, actually the head of the table in the developer community, which is crucial as software eats the world. Products like GitHub Copilot, an AI coding assistant developed by GitHub and Microsoft's AI Labs, show the synergies gained from that acquisition. On gaming and Xbox, Nadella also presided over the expansion of Microsoft's gaming segment. Under him, Microsoft acquired Mojang, the Swedish company behind Minecraft, for $235 billion in 2014. Minecraft was not just a popular game, it was a cultural phenomenon and an education tool. The acquisition paid off many times over as Minecraft continued to grow, and Microsoft leveraged it for educational editions and as a platform for experimentation with augmented reality, Minecraft Earth, and AI. Later, Nadella's Microsoft aimed even bigger in gaming, with the planned acquisition of Activision Blizzard for $69 billion in 2023, one of the largest tech acquisitions ever. While that deal faced regulatory hurdles, it underscored how serious Nadella was about gaming being a pillar of Microsoft's future. Console PC and cloud gaming via Xbox Game Pass. He recognized that gaming is a huge and growing entertainment industry that also drives technology adoption, AI, and future bets. Perhaps the most defining strategic bet of Nadella's later tenure has been artificial intelligence. He established AI as one of Microsoft's top priorities, funneling resources into research by creating the Microsoft AI and Research Group, led by world-class scientists. Early consumer forays like the Cortana voice assistant and the Tay chatbot didn't pan out. The former got overshadowed by Alexa and Siri, and the latter infamously went rogue on Twitter. But Microsoft kept investing steadily in AI capabilities behind the scenes. They integrated AI into cloud services like Azure Cognitive Services, for vision speech and language understanding, into Office like PowerPoint's designer feature, or Excel's analyze data, and into Windows, such as accessibility tools. The game changer came with Microsoft's partnership with a research lab called OpenAI. In 2019, Microsoft invested $1 billion in OpenAI, forging a close alliance to develop advanced AI on Azure. By 2023, as generative AI like OpenAI's GPT models burst onto the world stage, Microsoft doubled and tripled down, reportedly pouring in $10 billion more and becoming OpenAI's preferred cloud partner. This led to perhaps the biggest tech story of 2023, the emergence of AI tools like ChatGPT and Microsoft's integration of GPT-4 into a new AI-powered Bing and a product called Microsoft 365 Copilot, announced in 2023, is an AI assistant embedded in Office apps that can draft emails, summarize documents, and more. Nadella framed it as having a coworker that handles drudgery, so you can focus on creative work. The early steps toward realizing his vision of ambient intelligence he had hinted at in his first CEO email. One incredible subplot in late 2023 demonstrated Nadella's deft leadership in the AI arena. When OpenAI's CEO, Sam Altman, was suddenly fired by his board in a shock move, Nadella immediately offered Altman a job at Microsoft. This bold step effectively gave Altman leverage to negotiate his return and forced the OpenAI board's hand, while also showing Microsoft's unwavering commitment to their partnership. In the end, Altman did return to OpenAI, but the incident cemented Microsoft's image as a crucial ally to the most advanced AI research, with Nadella at the chessboard thinking several moves ahead. As of 2024, Microsoft is integrating generative AI across its product lines, from Bing's new chat features to Azure's AI services to coding tools like Copilot. Nadella's Microsoft intends not to miss the next big platform shift. If AI is the new electricity, Microsoft wants to be both a leading generator and distributor of that power. Financial and public perception. Turnaround under Nadella. Microsoft not only grew, but also regained respect. Satya cultivated a far better relationship with the developer community, enterprise customers, and even regulators. Microsoft became seen as an innovator again, winning huge contracts, leading in quantum computing research, pushing boundaries in AI, and consistently ranking at the top of corporate reputation surveys. Employee satisfaction within Microsoft also improved as the culture shifted. By many accounts, Microsoft in the late 2010s became one of the most desirable places for tech talent, a stark change from a decade prior. To put it simply, Nadella led one of the greatest corporate turnarounds in modern tech history. A company many thought was too old, too bureaucratic, or too stuck in its Windows ways to innovate, managed to reinvent itself into a growth powerhouse. By 2023, Microsoft had not only caught up to its FAANG rivals in areas like cloud and AI, but in some cases overtaken them or charted a distinct course. For instance, being arguably the most enterprise trusted of the big tech firms. The statistics are impressive, but behind them is a story of leadership and vision. Leadership philosophy, humility, empathy, and purpose. What makes Satya Nadella such an effective leader? Beyond the strategic moves and clever partnerships, it boils down to a consistent leadership philosophy that he embodies a blend of humility, empathy, and clear purpose. Nadella often says he looks for 3 traits in anyone he hires or promotes: to leadership, integrity, energy, and intellect. And he notes that none of those matter without empathy. He truly walks the talk in this regard. One of Nadella's oft-quoted lines internally was that he wanted Microsoft to move from know-it-all to learn-it-all. This wasn't just a catchy slogan. He modeled it. Each month, Nadella would send out a video or email about what he learned that month, sharing books he read, conversations that taught him something, and mistakes he made and corrected. By being open about his learning journey, he made it safe for others at Microsoft to admit they too were learning. In meetings, if someone used jargon or made an unclear point, Nadella might politely ask, "I'm not sure I understand. Could you clarify?" In the old Microsoft, that might have been seen as a weakness. In Nadella's Microsoft, it set a tone that there's no shame in asking questions. It was a subtle but powerful shift, one that encouraged intellectual humility and clarity of communication. Another pillar of Nadella's style is empowering others. Remember the cricket story where his captain gave him a second chance after failure? Satya carried that forward. He strives to be the kind of leader who gives the ball back to team members, even if they've stumbled to boost their confidence and help them grow. He once said, "Leaders create energy, not only in themselves, but in others." This ability to generate energy and optimism in a team is something many Microsoft employees cite about Nadella. Even in stressful times, he maintains a calm and encouraging demeanor. One could say he brought a bit of Eastern philosophy into a hard-charging Western corporation, emphasizing patience, reflection. Nadella is known to meditate and even read poetry. He often quotes Rumi and Shakespeare, and a sense that work isn't just about the quarter's profits, but about a larger purpose. Speaking of purpose, Nadella led a refresh of Microsoft's mission statement early in his tenure. The old mission from the Gates era, a PC on every desk and in every home, had long been achieved under Ballmer. A newer mission about devices and services was tried, but it didn't inspire much passion. Nadella articulated a broader, more timeless mission to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. This mission put the focus on people, consumers, developers, businesses, all of us, rather than on Microsoft itself. It's aspirational empower everyone, everywhere, but also nicely aligned to what Microsoft provides tools for productivity, connection, creativity. Nadella often asks, what is Microsoft's core identity? Why does the world need us? He emphasizes that Microsoft is a toolmaker enabling others to create and achieve. This clarity of purpose became a North Star for employees. It connected the day-to-day work, like improving an Excel feature or managing an Azure server, to a bigger impact, helping a student learn, or a small business thrive, or a hospital save lives more efficiently. Humility is another striking trait in Nadella's leadership. Despite his success, he's quick to deflect credit to his team or to luck. When Microsoft overtook Apple briefly to become the world's most valuable company in 2018, Nadella didn't gloat. Instead, he said it was only a milestone, and that success could be fleeting if Microsoft didn't continue to innovate for customers. Insiders say he has no interest in being the loudest voice in the room. Often he's the last to speak in meetings after carefully listening to everyone, a habit that forces others to voice their opinions and for decisions to consider multiple perspectives. This is in stark contrast to many celebrity CEOs in tech who dominate discussions and cultivate a cult of personality. Nadella's comparatively low ego has allowed Microsoft's bench of leaders to shine. He brought in talented executives from outside, like Peggy Johnson from Qualcomm LinkedIn's leadership, etc., promoted deserving insiders, and even worked to break down silos among historically rivalrous divisions by getting their leaders to share goals. Under him, you'd see the Windows team cooperating with the Azure team to solve customer problems, or Office working with Surface hardware folks to ensure the best experience, collaborations that were rare before. Nadella's human-centric approach also shows in how Microsoft responded to societal issues. For instance, he pushed for greater diversity and inclusion within the company, setting targets for hiring more women and underrepresented minorities in engineering roles and fostering a more inclusive environment. While progress is ongoing, Microsoft under Nadella made strides in pay equity and in supporting employee resource groups. He candidly addressed his own growth here early in his CEO tenure. he fumbled a public question about how women should ask for raises, giving an answer that sounded like they should rely on faith and good karma, for which he apologized and used as a learning moment. He didn't hide from the mistake. He issued an all-hands email admitting he was wrong and that he needed to learn, which in turn signaled to thousands of employees that vulnerability is okay. Another aspect often overlooked Nadella's sense of humor. While he isn't a comedian by any stretch, colleagues note that he has a light, self-deprecating humor that puts people at ease. Whether it's joking about his cricket obsession or the fact that he's a geek who happily reads tech manuals on weekends, he brings a lightness to interactions. In one interview, he laughed about how, as a young engineer, he once accidentally crashed Microsoft's internal network with a buggy piece of code. "I thought I'd get fired, but I learned even big screw-ups can be fixed." He chuckled. Such anecdotes told with a smile helped dismantle the fear-based atmosphere that once hung over teams. All these elements, growth mindset, empathy from personal experience, clarity of mission, humility, and a dash of humor, combined to make Satya Nadella's leadership deeply inspirational. Employees were not just following orders. They started to believe in the mission and saw Nadella as a leader who authentically cared about them and Microsoft's impact on the world. He wasn't rallying the troops with bombastic slogans. He was quietly motivating them through trust and vision. And it wasn't just internal outside. Many young entrepreneurs and professionals began looking to Nadella as a role model of a different kind of tech CEO. One can be successful and kind. One can be visionary and humble. This inspired a broader discussion in the industry about empathetic leadership. In a sector infamous for egos and cutthroat competition, Nadella stood out as a gentleman executive, proving that nice guys don't finish last, they can finish first, and take everyone along on the journey. Epilogue: The legacy of the reboot. As we reflect on Satya Nadella's journey, from a cricket field in Hyderabad to the boardrooms of Redmond, one theme shines through: the power of renewal. Nadella often uses the phrase, "hit refresh," and indeed he refreshed Microsoft at a time when many thought it was beyond saving. He combined the emotional intelligence to change hearts and minds with the technical vision to change products and strategy. Few leaders have achieved such a sweeping transformation at such scale. By 2025, Microsoft stands as a company reborn. It's hard to even reconcile the Microsoft of today with the Microsoft of 2013. Today, a developer writing open source code on a MacBook likely uses Microsoft's GitHub and maybe even Visual Studio Code. A teenager playing Minecraft or an Xbox game is a Microsoft customer in a fun way that Microsoft wasn't known for. Before a Fortune 500 CEO signs a huge deal to move their operations to Azure, trusting Microsoft to be their tech backbone, and millions of office workers collaborate over Microsoft Teams, which became indispensable during the pandemic. Microsoft is cool again. Microsoft is trusted. Again, Microsoft is everywhere again. Not by forcing itself on users, but by winning them over. Satya Nadella's reboot of Microsoft will be studied in business schools for years. How did he do it? By balancing head and heart. He made brilliant strategic moves, cloud partnerships, acquisitions, but also won the hearts of employees and customers by infusing Microsoft with empathy and purpose. He proved that a huge organization can change its culture if the change starts at the top and the leader truly embodies it. Nadella didn't just issue edicts. He led by example as a humble learner. When he took over, Microsoft was seen as a fading giant. Now it's a case study in renewal, a sort of corporate phoenix. Perhaps the most inspiring aspect of Nadella's story is what it teaches about leadership in our fast-evolving world. In tech and beyond, things move quickly, and past success guarantees nothing. What made you successful in the past can become your biggest baggage. Nadella showed that reinvention is possible if you have the courage to change mindset and direction. He wasn't attached to legacy sacred cows, not even Windows or the idea of Microsoft winning at the expense of others. Instead, he focused on creating value for customers, for employees, for partners. In doing so, he unlocked Microsoft's dormant, innovative spirit. We began our story with Nadella writing an email in the early hours of his CEO tenure. Let's end with a scene a decade later. It's 2024, and Satya Nadella walks onto the stage at a Microsoft event to a standing ovation. On the big screen behind him are the words, "Empowering others," and around them swirl icons of AI cloud and global connectivity. He smiles and begins in his characteristically calm voice. When I took on this role, I said our industry respects innovation over tradition. That's as true today as ever we've had. To reimagine our company, our culture, and our future. And by doing so, we found our soul. That timeless mission to empower every person on the planet to achieve more. The audience, employees, developers, customers, erupts in applause because they feel those words, Microsoft under Nadella, has indeed found its soul again. Satya steps down from the podium and the lights dim, but the impact of his words, and more importantly, his actions, remains illuminated. The once lumbering software giant is now sprinting full of learn-it-alls hungry for what's next. And as for Satya Nadella, his legacy is secure. The man who rebooted Microsoft, not by flipping a switch, but by rekindling the passion and imagination that made Microsoft great in the first place, and by adding a heart that will keep it great for years to come. Microsoft's reboot is an ongoing journey, but one thing is clear under Satya Nadella's inspirational and strategic leadership. This 48-year-old tech titan has rediscovered how to hit refresh on itself. And in doing so, Microsoft has not only survived, but thrived. An empathetic colossus standing tall in the cloud era with a CEO who proved that nice guys can finish first and take everyone further together.